Restorative Practices has been an absolute game changer in my classroom for me. From my classroom management to the general climate of my entire room to the academic success and effort that kids put in. Learning the foundation and the science behind restorative practices, the shame versus the guilt, the social discipline window, and doing with kids has been big this year for me.
I feel like I get to know Miss Beavers more because I don't really know her, and I feel like I know her now, and I think I should be able to know other teachers like that.
Effective language, fair process, bringing students up to the value instead of down to the rule, and really always building that bar. It's made for such an incredibly fun and successful school year for me.
Better to know more about them, because if you say something wrong, it can affect them in certain ways that you can't really understand.
Circles have been the best avenue for me to build community.
Sitting here and no one can really judge you and your opinions out in the real world. That's all people do.
And don't get me wrong, we do not do circles every day, but I do aim for a couple per month of a wide variety. Sometimes they're academic, sometimes they're building the bar, they're community builders. It just depends what my kids need at the time.
I feel like circles is really good especially if you had a really bad morning or start to your day. It can kind of just help relieve that stress.
There's been a lot of foundational work with these kids building the bar. They've learned to have fun with each other, and in doing so they've gotten to know each other a lot better. They've grown to love getting to know each other and truly seeing the value in knowing and understanding their classmates a little bit better.
It's important because sometimes you don't know what's going on in the inside, you just see what's going on the outside. So they could be dealing with a lot more and you just won't know until you get to know them.
But when we get to know each other better, our level of empathy is just so much higher for one another.
I would say it matters because if they're going through something, they'll know that someone's there for them and that somebody cares for them.
Some days I connect it back to our academics. I'm a reading teacher, so we've done circles where we connect back to the texts in class. For example, we've talked about internal and external conflicts. We talked about what conflicts our characters are feeling, and then we turn around and talk about times we've had internal conflict or external conflict. Before winter break here, we had seen a really extreme uptick in rude behavior with our kids. Anything you can think of that 7th graders would call each other, they were doing it. But we didn't know where to start. We had too many students involved at this point. And it was my entire 7th grade team's belief that most of these things were set out of ignorance, for a complete unawareness, and they didn't understand the impact of their words on their classmates. So we decided to first do a very, very simple, straightforward presentation to all of the students. If you want a behavior, you teach a behavior. But we knew the logistical side wouldn't be enough. They really needed to dive into how it was making each other feel, how it impacted their classmates. And so I decided that a circle, looking at the harm that's being done, would be the best way. So we know that once we know each other's stories, it's just much harder to say hurtful things to each other. And I felt the kids really needed to know each other's stories a little bit more. First, I had students fill out a reflection about a time that a peer had said something to them that harmed them in some way. They answered some very straightforward questions. What happened, how it made them feel at the time, and what impact has it had for them now or for the future? And the round was very simple. What's your reaction to this information? And I invited students to relate back to what we talked about to their own lives if they could, or I even offered up if you were comfortable sharing that this was your reflection. Putting a face to a story really helped kids too. Some were not comfortable, and that was totally okay, but some did. And words cannot express the impact of this circle. Their reactions were unbelievable. Students shared their common experiences. Students were sharing that they had said those things. They owned it, but they just didn't know how hurtful they were truly being.
One girl talked a lot, and I was mean to her, but now I'm trying to be nicer to her.
So many students that I was worried wouldn't have a positive reaction to the circle, that they wouldn't think it applied to them, that they wouldn't be fazed, by the emotional side. We're showing empathy like I had never ever seen it before.
I remember after 7th period, I just see like a whole bunch of people come out of the reading just crying.
And by the time I read through those heavy hitters, which were heavy hitters, not only was I crying, but I would say about 50% of all the students were. These are tough 12-year-olds, 12 and 13-year-olds, and they just had no idea what their classmates were going through.
Like, have been thinking about the fact that not everybody goes through a perfect life, that, you know, people you can see on the outside, but on the inside they're going through some of the same things that you are.
It's night and day different. Are we still seeing typical middle school behavior? Absolutely we are. They are still 12 and 13 years old. There's no stopping that. But it is not the same level of cruel indifference to one another that we were seeing before. It's not the same name calling. It's being more mindful of who you're saying these words to. If it's funny to one person, it may not be funny to another. It might be funny to a friend, but not another peer that you don't interact with. And none of this circle would never have been possible without that foundational work, without the science behind it, without the affective language, without the values, without building the bar. I couldn't have jumped into such a hard, heavy-hitting circle if they didn't already know each other well enough to feel comfortable to share these things and to cry in front of each other and to share their personal responsibility for what they've done. If we hadn't built the bar, that wouldn't have been possible. That trust has to be there, that understanding each other has to be there first. And I foresee the impact of this particular circle lasting, my hope, through the rest of their school. They understand that they're going to be together for a long time, and they might as well get to know each other, so that this doesn't keep happening. You don't want to hurt the people you're around. You don't want to hurt the people you love.
How much it just shows how much you actually care for us instead of some other teachers that can fake a smile. And because I've had a few teachers like that, and I'm just happy to know you care for us.